Open Heart. Welcome to our Livestream Celebration for this Sunday, January the 10th, 2021. I know, as you know, that this has been a very, very event-filled week, a troubling week, a shocking week in many ways. It's been a week in which we have seen so much happen in just a few days, and our trajectory as a country, even as a world, has been forever changed in many different ways. It's also today the 19th anniversary of the organizing of Open Heart Spiritual Center. We celebrate 19 years today, and while there's so many things that are going on and all of that, I do want to acknowledge that we have been a community that has weathered storms. We have been a community that has come together. We have been a community that continues to move forward and to do all of the things that we do that make us unique, make us special. We've seen many people that have been a part of our community that in many ways are not here because of various reasons, but that who contributed to that, and we stand on their shoulders. And those of you that are part of us now, and even those that are yet to come, all that has happened, all that has taken place to make this what I believe to be one of the dynamic places in which we continually we are continue the place where God shows up. So I thank you for 19 years. I thank you for all of your support through this global pandemic and our having to continue to meet virtually and to do things in a very different way. All that you do to support us and everything else, thank you for it all. I want to thank our leadership council and all of the people who are part of Open Heart who do so many things to make this possible each and every week and for 19 years. I greet you. I bless you. I see God in you.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to today's Open Heart Spiritual Center virtual service. Thank you for joining us today. Welcome. And as we like to say, we greet you, we bless you, we see the God in you. And so as this is the new year, knowing that we have each and every single moment to begin again and to be new, this is a new moment right here. And so join me as I just open us up. Allow our heart space to open up and to just be present in this time. And I just give thanks for this day. I give thanks for all that have a part in this, the music, the affirmative reading, the prayers, and the message. And knowing that we are all here gathered together, beginning this day anew. Let go of anything that has come before this time. Just let it go. Let it go. And allow yourself to be present in this moment, right here and right now. And let this celebration, let it begin. And so it is.
Our theme this month is New Every Moment. And our daily affirmation, won't you say it with me? Every moment is new. Because I know that principle is not bound by precedent, I enter this day of promise, potential, and possibility with a sense of joy and anticipation.
Today's affirmative reading is an excerpt from the book Honoring the Self, The Psychology of Confidence and Respect by Nathaniel Branden. The first act of honoring the self is the assertion of consciousness, the choice to think, to be aware, to send the searchlight of consciousness outward toward the world and inward toward our own being. To default on this effort is to default on the self at the most basic level. To honor the self is to be willing to think independently, live by your own mind, and to have the courage of our own perceptions and judgments. To honor the self is to be willing to know not only what we think, but also what we feel, what we want, need, desire, suffer over, are frightened or angered by, and to accept our right to experience such feelings. The opposite of this attitude is denial, disowning, repression, and self repudiation. To honor the self is to preserve an attitude of acceptance, which means to accept what we are without self oppression, self castigation, without any pretense about the truth of our own being. Pretense aimed at deceiving either ourselves or anyone else. To honor the self is to live authentically, to speak and act from our innermost convictions and feelings. To honor the self is to refuse to accept unearned guilt and to do our best to correct such guilt as we may have earned. To honor the self is to be committed to our right to exist, which proceeds from the knowledge that our life does not belong to others and that we are not here on earth to live up to someone else's expectations. To many people, this is a terrifying responsibility. To honor the self is to be in love with our own life, in love with our possibilities for growth and for experiencing joy, in love with the process of discovering and exploring our distinctively human potentialities. Today's affirmation is I will honor myself.
Good morning, and these are our announcements for this Sunday, January the 10th, 2021. Happy anniversary, Open Heart. Yes, this is our 19th year that we're celebrating today. 19 years ago, a small group gathered together to organize what you see now as Open Heart Spiritual Center, a place that's rooted in the New Thought Ancient Wisdom tradition, one that teaches the spiritual philosophy that captures the threads of truth that span across the religions of the world. And we are a community that embraces all people, regardless of race, ethnicity, background, sexual orientation. We are a place that comes together and celebrate, and are just so glad to be a part of this community and have you a part of this community. Once again, happy 19th anniversary. Speaking of celebrating, it's our January babies that we celebrate today and this entire month. Renee Crone, Marshall Gilmore, John Gilmore, Sydney Moonflower, Carolyn Head, April Clinton, Daryl Lowe, Emma Crystal, Juanita White, Yvonne Gilmore, and Vanessa McVeigh. Have a happy birthday. Congratulations on another journey around the sun. May you celebrate this entire month of January. We hold in our prayers each and every day those that you see on this prayer list and beyond. We know thoughts of comfort and of healing, thoughts of strength and sustaining, all of those things for people who are a part of this prayer list and beyond. Each and every day, we hold you in prayer and call you by name. There's still time to sign up for the virtual vision board workshop that is today. today at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time is being led by Gabriel Dixon. He says to remind you that you'll need a poster board, a glue stick, and magazines. RSVP him at stylebygabriel@gmail.com so he can give you all of the details, all of the information that you need to be able to log into the workshop and to participate. It will be a great and grand opportunity for you. Each Tuesday at 12:30 p.m., we have our Midday Love Grid meditation led by Britannia Allen. Go to our website, ohsc901.com, to enter into the meditation room. I'm still accepting your affirmative reading videos. Thank you, Jocelyn Johnson, for submitting one that we saw today. And you too can participate by sending me that video, jgilmore@openheartspiritual.org. And each and every morning at 8 a.m. Central Time, we have our daily affirmative prayer call, 901-586-8755. It's an opportunity to start or continue your day with affirmative prayer. Infinite prosperity is mine to share. Thank you so much for your support of us through your conscious giving. We know that times can be uncertain, but you continue to support Open Heart, and it is truly appreciated. You can do so via our app. You can do so online or text the word GIVE to 615-422-4292. Thanks again.
I welcome you to the centering moment. This is the time where we can reflect on all that has gone before with gratitude and joy. Let us take a breath in through our nose and exhale through our mouth. And it is in this space, as we prepare to hear the message, that we can reset, refocus, and renew. Let us breathe in and out again. Spirit of the living God, we are open, ready, and available to hear, inspired, and be motivated by you, O divine and beautiful Spirit. And so it is, and namaste.
And let it go. You don't even have to think about it no more. Get out of the way. 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 Get out of the way and let God do its thing. Look like the way the world's on your back. Take a deep breath. Cut yourself some slack. So, universe is working, good is flowing. You don't let me see the nigga, see it's growing. Get out of the way. Oh, get out of the way. Get out the way and let God do its thing. Get out of the way. 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 Get out of the way and let God do its thing.
In and for the world. On nearly everyone's mind has been the events of Wednesday, January the 6th, 2021, where largely white domestic terrorists stormed the Capitol building in Washington, D.C. in hopes of overturning the legislature's certification of the presidential election. I wrestled with my thoughts about it all week. I had conversation with ministerial colleagues and others about what it was that I was going to say today. Some people even asked me if I was going to say something about it. Hence the title, In and for the World. A number of years ago, one of my friends made me aware of a book that was written by a professor at Memphis Theological Seminary that was called In and for the World. And in the introduction to the book, the author shared the experience of there being an event that happened in this country. I don't even remember the event now, but an event that happened in this country that also was on the minds of people that week. And being someone who taught worship, he went to 2 church services on that following Sunday. And he said he was shocked that when he got there to both of those services, that not one thing was said about the events of the week. Not in the prayers or the liturgy, the message, or anything reflected what had happened. He says, as a matter of fact, he could have taken those worship services and dropped them in any century or any time because there was no context, no trying to take what had happened and make it a part of what was there. And so as I thought about that, one of the things, and I know we don't call what we do at Open Heart worship, but we call it celebration more. But the thing of it is, and what I understand is that this week could not have passed without saying something, without recognizing what all of us have been thinking and feeling and attempting to process and all of that. I don't pretend to have the answers today. I'm merely here to try and contextualize and maybe make some sense and to ponder out loud what it is that I'm thinking, what it is that I saw. I know that not everybody will like what I have to say. Not everybody will agree with it. I don't have to have agreement. I don't have to have people liking it. None of that. I'm here speaking what it is that I have to say from this platform, from this celebration here this morning. I'm reminded of an experience that a colleague who has been very influential on my ministry had a number of years ago. He had been invited to a speaking engagement out of town, and he had a friend who lived in that particular city, and they'd not seen one another for a number of years, and so he agreed, rather than staying in a hotel, to spend the night at his friend's house because he had an early morning flight the next day. And so when the speaking engagement was over and they spent some time talking, and then he went on and he had to sleep on the couch because a friend lived in a small apartment in a big city. And he said that as he woke up the next morning and he opened his eyes, that in the early morning light, he saw across the room a big painting. His friend was an artist, and there was this big, beautiful painting that was tall and life-size almost, and he was struck by what he saw as the beauty, but there was something else that started to catch his attention. So he said he got up off the couch and he started walking over toward the painting. And as he got closer and closer, it became apparent to him what much of the makeup of the painting was. The painting, while from a distance, and he saw all the beauty, that as he got close, that what he also recognized is that the artist had incorporated in the painting profanity, cuss words that were a part of the design of the painting. And he was struck by that fact of here was something that on the one hand had beauty, but on the other hand, it had ugliness, it had profanity, it had many things that would be jarring and it would assault people's senses and all of that. And he said he realized that really in order to take in the full meaning, the full expression of that painting, that he said, number one, he had to do something, which was to face it and to take it in its totality, to recognize that he couldn't accept and behold the beauty of it without also taking into account the ugliness that was a part of it, that he had to face it. Some are appalled by the level of violence and terror and vitriol and outrageousness of the protesters, the rioters, the terrorists this week. I'm not. It was something that I saw being enabled by the politicians, the media, and the folks who refused to really address the pot that the president was stirring this whole time. There was really no secret this pot was being stirred. The rhetoric was there. The denial about the outcome of the election was there. The lies and all of the other spin and everything was there. He continually sounded the dog whistles that his followers heard, while many either chose to ignore it or act like it wasn't all that serious, that it wasn't all that bad. And we saw now that proved not to be true. This is not who we are, some cry. Let's be honest. Let's face it. No matter how some people try and spin it, we live in a nation that was built on seizing land from the natives who were already here. It wasn't discovered by somebody. The natives were already here when other people got here, and who seized the land by violence and by trickery and deception and many other things. We live in a nation whose infrastructure and whose economic structure were built on the backs of enslaved Africans, and how there's always been those who've had an advantage over the disadvantage, how there's been that constant kind of things. The mobs aren't new. So many people can share about experiences in history of people being driven out of their homes and being driven out of their neighborhoods and businesses and ways of life by mobs such as what we saw the other day in Washington, D.C. They aren't new. And speaking of the mobs, one of the things that we know, if those have been black or brown or indigenous people, the outcome would have been totally different. The responses we know that come from law enforcement when those people are involved in protesting and speaking their voice and calling for social justice and all of those things was totally different from what we saw on Wednesday. And people have now, or at least some people have started to acknowledge it and recognize it, while others try to spin it or put it off on something else. But we know that it would have been totally different. It's not speculation. It's what we have seen. It's what we already know has happened. What we saw was an attempt by one group to impose the will on everybody else. Look at the makeup. By their fruits you shall know them, the scriptures remind us, the Bible reminds us of. It was one narrow group who are attempting to overturn the decision of many, many more. And it was one that was a narrow group. And when we look at the fact that the demographics of this country have never really reflected the power structure of the administration, and the decision making has never really reflected that. But that is the great America that many are trying to hold on to. Not recognizing and realizing the diversity, and that we live in a changing world, that we live in a place now in which things are different and demand to be different. And I want to say this morning that I think that in the midst of all of this, and I'm still processing this, but I think that here and now there's an opportunity for change. An opportunity for change, and I think that what we are seeing is the result of some of that change, and the change that is attempting to make its way. A number of years ago, I studied something that was called Bowen Family Systems Theory. And one of the concepts in that is whenever there is an attempt at change, whenever people begin working to change things, that what happens is, first of all, things get worse before they get better. And a part of that is because whenever there's an attempt at change, those who feel themselves threatened by and affected by change do everything they can to pull things back to the way that they used to be. They try to get things the way that they once were. Sound familiar? Well, I'll say it another way. Make America great again. That might sound familiar to you now. That attempt to pull things back the way that they used to be, rather than accepting change, rather than being about a part of change, standing in the way, trying to obstruct change and to wrestle things back so that only a few have the opportunities that really are for many, many more, that are really ultimately for all. As I said, I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I do believe that what we've seen and experienced, not just this week, but something that we've seen for years, is evidence of the spiritual principle that when something is not healed, when something is not addressed, when something is not seriously taken into consideration, it keeps rising up again for healing. It keeps presenting itself again for healing. And that is what we have been seeing. And so as things are unfortunate, as things got to the level that they have, and we know that there's much division in this country, things have been split, and it hasn't been just in the last week or so, but it's been going on for a while. It's been here for years and years and years and decades, and it continually comes up for healing. And rather than addressing it, rather than being a part of the change, there's so many things that have happened to try to keep things one way, to keep them there. And no amount of, well, let's move on and let's try to get back to this way or that way is going to change things. We've got to face it. No amount of spiritual bypassing either. It's interesting that back in the summer when we were talking about the things that happened to do with the Black Lives Matter movement and the things that were being said about social justice in this country and the injustices that were happening. And I talked about it then, about the fact that so many people oftentimes in our New Thought circles attempt to spiritual bypass things. Well, we'll not focus on those things because those things are political and we are spiritual. And so we'll just meditate about it and envision harmony and see all of those things. And again, if we don't address it, it will come back up for healing. Yes, I believe in the tools that we have. Yes, I believe that there is a time for recognizing our spiritual power and calling on that spiritual power and allowing the tools and techniques that we have. There's a time and a place for that. But without addressing those things that need change, without addressing those things that come up for healing, we are just spiritually doing spiritual bypass and spiritual malpractice, and nothing ever ultimately gets solved. And for me, it's striking that today, we at Open Heart Spiritual Center are celebrating 19 years of existence. Yes, 19 years ago, we at Open Heart had our first celebration. 19 years ago, we came together as a community. A few of us, some who are still a part of us, came together and had our first celebration. Something that I organized after some experiences of seeing one group who was trying to say that their way was the only way, trying to impose their way of seeing the world and being in the world as the only way. But it wasn't true to how I had come to know God, how I had come to know Spirit. It wasn't true to all of those things. And so I left the place where I was. I left part of the experience of my childhood and my growing, the denomination, my own spirituality and thinking, to address and to become a part of something that I felt I was being called to, that reflected who I truly am. One that helped me to recognize the divinity within me and the divinity within each and every person, to reflect the diversity that's in the world. Is there's not just one group, but there are many groups of people who have very many different ways, who look different, who love differently, who have all kinds of different backgrounds and different experiences and all of that. And having a community that reflected that, that honored that, that addressed that didn't have people try to pretend to be one thing, but to be who they truly were. And that became the impetus for organizing Open Heart. And I know that we're not perfect. I know there are even people within our midst that the diversity that I talk about is an issue for some. The ways in which we reflect various things and how we are non-traditional and we do a lot of things in a different manner from what people see is oftentimes also very different. I know years ago when we first got started and people would come in, and there were a couple of people who would approach me privately and say, well, I don't understand this. What is this? Why don't you tell people the truth? Why don't you attempt to save people's souls and all of those things? But it was a part of recognizing that it's larger than one particular theology or one particular way of being in the world, but about recognizing the true diversity of who we are and the expressiveness and the expansiveness of spirit. We're not perfect, but we're a community that is in this world. And perhaps we have something to show the world. To show the world that there's beauty here, that there's beauty to be recognized and embraced and lived, that there's beauty to be here and experienced, that there's beauty that's a part of who we are, that's a part of the expression of spirit. But like the painting that my friend saw, we have to face the ugliness. We have to address that which is there also that is not beautiful, that is not in many ways what we would like to see, but to know that it's part also of what we have, and being able to use our spiritual understanding and our spiritual tools to recognize that, to live in the midst of that, to find the strength that we need to move in this time, to be able to go from this week to the future and to the things that we have before us, to recognize and to realize those things, and to know that we can be change agents. And as you heard me say earlier this summer, and I'm continuing to say that, to be spiritual activists, that we are people who address the injustices of this society and of this world, that we are people who speak up and speak about those things, and we do it from a spiritual understanding of a God that is and expresses in and through and as each and every person, that we recognize the sanctity of our lives and the sacredness of who we are, and recognize our true identity, and we do those things. All of this week, in the midst, the aftermath of what was happening the words of that Negro spiritual kept ringing in my head and ringing in my ears. And I don't completely know what it's all about, what it means, but I end with that. The Negro spiritual that says, over my head, I see trouble in the air, but there must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I hear music in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I hear singing in the air. There must be a God somewhere. Over my head, I see glory in the air. There must be a God somewhere. I'm not speculating about there must be a God somewhere. I know that there is a God somewhere. It's above my head, but it's also in me, and it's in you. It's around us. It's a part of all of us. It's who we are. It's our opportunity to do what we can in our own corner of the world, right where we are, with the people that we know, the people that we call friends, the people we might call frenemies, whatever it might be. But it's an opportunity for us to stand for change, to be in and for this world, a world of beauty that, in spite of the ugliness that is there, we can work to bring it out. We can work to appreciate it. We can work to make it a reality. And so it is.
I let it go. I release the thing I'm clinging to. I release what's holding me, and I'm falling into God's love. I let it be. There's nothing more for me to do. Nothing more to say. I'm just falling into God's love. I feel Spirit holding it's by grace I see, I see.
There was a time in my life I thought I had to do it all for myself. I didn't know that the grace of God was sufficient, and I didn't know that the love of God was at hand. But now I can say, if you are discouraged, struggling just to make it through another day, you've got to let it go, let it all go. And this is what you have to say. I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life. And my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggles, no more strife. With my faith I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggles, no more strife. With my faith I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. I release and I let go. I let the Spirit run my life, and my heart is open wide. Yes, I'm only here for God. No more struggles, no more strife. With my faith I see the light. I am free in the Spirit. Yes, I'm only here for God. Yes, I'm only here for
There are times in our life we give up the fight. We sit down and cry. We let life pass us by. Keep on, look at the past. Things that just didn't last. We gave up too fast. We chose to let it all go. Just listen, just listen. Spirit is calling, our hearts are yearning. Just listen, just listen. Feel your heart burning. Your mind is learning to let go. Be in the flow, then you will know who you really are. Who you really are. Just listen. And so it is.